Page 138, Danny Boy. We're getting into some rather tricky stuff here. So I want to talk about a few things, give you some things to think about. Now I know I've covered this in other videos, or at least one other video. I don't remember what I said, I really don't care what I said. This is what I'm thinking about now, so this is what I'm saying now. If you want the complete picture, you'd have to go watch the other video also and listen to whatever I said there, and hopefully I don't contradict myself too much. I'm going to start with the right hand. Rhythm-wise, this is not a difficult piece. You just got a lot of eighth notes. You can handle eighth notes, I hope. If you still can't handle eighth notes, please go back to level 1 and just go through the whole thing. Your rhythm should be there by now. You should be able to count by now. If not, something is seriously wrong. You really need to go back through level 1 again and try this whole thing again real slowly and carefully. So make sure you get the counting down because it's so important. Now this is in the key of E flat major. It's got 3 flats. We've been in E flat major before. It's no big deal. So right at the beginning, you're starting out. We want to hear the melody. The melody is the top note. By now, you ought to be getting to the point where you can control the notes well enough that you can bring out any note you want in a chord and have it louder than the others, whatever it is. In this case, the top note. That's what we want to hear. Then the first full measure there, watch the fingering. The chord is 2-4, then it's a 1-2. It's all connected, it's all one phrase. Next measure, crossover. Now it's the end of a phrase, so you're going to lift up and down before you go on. And using the same finger, so this works out fine. Normally I wouldn't want to use the same finger, but this is a slow piece, sort of. So, and you've got time between the phrases to do that. Second line, bring out the E flat. The F there. Lift up at the end of the phrase and back down. Same thing, blah, 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 you got it all. At the end of the page there on 138, last measure, you're going to hold the E flat down, and that's the melody. Then as you hold the E flat down, you're going to play those eighth notes. But keep them down under the E flat. The E flat is the important note. Then you're ending that page on an eighth note, sort of like on a beat, and then on the end of the beat is the next page thing, just like it just goes on. However, in an interpretive thing here is you would sort of die away at the bottom of page 130, maybe even slow down if you want, and then you lift up at the end of the phrase and then you take off. It's almost like there's a pause or something between the two pages. There isn't, but before you go off. Now, these chords are at the top of page 139. The melody's the top note. It's what we want to hear. So what I'm recommending is 1-2-4, 1-2-5, 1-2-4, and now you can do a 1-2-4, or excuse me, a 1-2-5 or a 1-3-5, whichever one you like better. Then going on, it's 4-5 on the 2 Ds. At the end of the first line, the last 3 eighth notes, it's 2, 3, and then I recommend a 2-4. And then a 1-5 for the next line. So we connect it all with the fingers. And then second line, first measure, it was a 1-5, and then a 4, and then a 1-5. Now, careful with the E flat. It's an eighth note, not a quarter note. I tend to hang on to these, and that's my error. I shouldn't do that. So the C is by itself. And then the G is by itself. So be careful. Don't hang on to the... I don't know that it's a big crime if you do anyway, because the pedal's going to hold the noise out anyway. So it's... But technically speaking, it's an eighth note. Then we have a very awkward situation. because I'm ending on the second finger, and then I have a chord. And I like to connect the melody, like so. But I can't if I'm going to do this and play the chord. Doesn't work out very well. If a person were arranging this for piano and they arrange something like that, I would just as soon just shoot them and put them out of their misery. Don't arrange for piano anymore if you're going to do that. However, there might be a way to work around it, a little bit at least. And that is, we cheat just a little bit. It's not really cheating, but you'll get the idea. Rather than playing that chord, that half note chord with the 1, 2, 5 like they're suggesting, I'm going to play the F, the top note, with the thumb in the right hand. So I get the melody. That's what I want. Then after that, I'm going to substitute the second finger for it, because in the next chord, the 8th note, the F is tied, but I want to play the D, the middle note of the chord. I want to play that with the thumb. I'll explain more about that in a minute. So to go over that, with the 8th notes leading into the half note, it's here. Thumb, substitute second finger, and then when it's time to play the next chord, I'm going to play the D with the thumb. I'm going to cover the other notes with the left hand, and I'll come back to this at that time. It helps me out because the left hand is there, it can play them. That's fine. So why not? I prefer that anyway, because I can get away with it. Third line down on that arpeggiated chord, I'm going to play the bottom note on the beat with the left hand. This, by the way, is the climax of the piece. This is where most all pieces have at least one climax, some have more than one, where it is like the most exciting part or the loudest part or the most emotional part, if you will. It's just, and this is it on this one. Because you're going to be here. Yeah. All right. Third line, last measure. You're here. Pedal will help you out here. And that arpeggiated chord coming up, I'm going to play all 4 of those notes one at a time. I'm going to hang on to that for 1 extra count. And then we go on. And I'm going to finger those last 3 8th notes, 2, 3, 1. Etc. Then in the last line on page 139, you have here, and 1, 5, and I'm going to do a 4. You can cross over the 5 to get a 4. That happens a lot in piano. You just want to learn to do it. Then those last 8th notes, that's just an arpeggio. Someday, if I ever do the arpeggio files, it'll be in there where it'll teach you that fingering for the E flat arpeggio. And the left hand's no biggie. At the top of page 138, you have this broken chord. Now watch it going to the next, because we're going to use 5th finger again. You're going to lift up and just move up. It's okay because you don't have to connect them. It's not melody. We can have a little break there. There's no problem. You don't want to break in the right hand because there's a phrase over it, but we can have a little break in the left hand. And I would say pedal will help you out there, but I'm going to change the pedaling because their pedaling is way too mushy for me. I don't like it at all. So forget the pedal. Pedal's not going to help you here. You're just going to lift your left to go here. You may have to practice that so you can get it accurately because you're using the same finger for both. Then, moving on, second line, second measure. You're here, A natural, and I would use second finger on the A flat. All the time while you're holding the B flat down. And then you lift up, and that gives you a chance to move. Third line is the same as the first. Fourth line on page 138. Last measure. I recommend you finger that measure with a 5-3, not 5-2. Then a 2 on the C. You're not holding the 5th finger down. You're just... So we lose that. But we want these notes going with these notes to support that note. Whatever. And then we go on. Page 139. First line, it's the last two measures. Well, it's the first full measure. All right, you have this. Fourth finger. Now, I recommend a 1 on the A flat, and rather than a 2, I recommend a 3, and then a 2, and then a 1. You can slide the 1 off like they're telling you to, but it's dangerous and it's unnecessary in this case because you can finger those last two notes with 3-2. And then the next measure you can put a 1 on it. That's what I would recommend you do. In the second line on page 139. So you're starting out okay, but then I recommend a 3 on the G, 2 on the A flat, and then bring the thumb down and get the G. Then you can do a 4. Now, in the next measure, we're helping out the right hand because the right hand isn't going to play the chord, it's just going to play the F. So we're going to catch those two notes, the A natural and the C, with the left hand, so it's here. Now, you can't hang on to them because you got to go down. And you can do that with the 4. You have to let up on the A and the C. We can't hang on to them, unfortunately. It's okay. I don't think it'll matter. And then here we're going to do the B flat and A flat together. And because we're doing the D and the F on the other hand. And then we're back on to what they want. Now, third line down, first measure. You're starting out okay. 4, 5. Here I recommend a 2-1 on that. They're doing a 1 and then cross over to the third finger. You can get away with that, but it's iffy, and I recommend if you can get anything else to work, use it. So here, rather than a 1-3, I'm going to do a 1-2. It's a stretch, but my hands are big enough. If your hands are not big enough, you're stuck pretty much with a 1-3. So here I'm going to do a 2-1, and then in the next measure I can do a 2, and I'm back in line. Last line, last two measures, left hand, those notes are tied to the end. So you can hold them down all the way to the end once you play them. And I know the pedal's down, it'll keep the sound going, don't care. Hold them down with the hands. Now the suggestions I'm making here are not absolute. They're just ideas and things to give you to think about. Other people would finger this differently and they would play it differently, and that's great. That's part of the beauty of music. So you experiment. That's the idea, is you take a pencil and you write it in. Make sure you have an eraser so you can erase them and write in something else or whatever you're going to do. A well thought out piece of music is usually pretty marked up. So experiment with it and see what you think. As far as the pedaling goes, I'd like to make some changes because I think their pedaling is very mushy sounding. Right at the beginning there on page 138, in the first full measure, when you're pedaling this, they're suggesting hold the pedal down through the whole measure. If you do that, you're going to get this. If you don't mind that, go for it. But I suggest you lift the pedal up right after you play the half note E flat in the left hand. So these last 3/8 notes in the right hand are not caught with pedal. You're just fingering them. So it would sound like this. And to me, that's much cleaner, clearer sound than what they're suggesting. In the second measure, I would suggest you lift the pedal up before you play the phrase in the right hand. Those last 3 notes. Lift it up right before you play that E flat. You're going to keep the left hand down, but lift the lift the pedal up so we get some silence in the right hand. The left hand you connect all the way through. Don't lift the left hand up, it's just the right hand, so it's this. Like so. Second line, believe it or not, you can pedal it like they're showing. Just make sure we get some silence in that second measure before you play those last 3/8 notes, because it's a new phrase. Third line, I suggest you pedal it the same as the first line. And then the fourth line, you can pedal it the way they're telling you to pedal it, is just fine. However, I like some silence between the two pages. 138, 139. So at the bottom of 138, when you finish that last chord, when the pedal's down, it's not going to be down very long, lift it up with the hands before you go on. And here we're pedaling this whole thing because we're building up in sound and we want more harmonics, and the pedal will allow us to do this. It's not loud yet, it's just sort of loud. Follow their pedaling is fine, at least they're not mushy this time. Now here is interesting. It's the first line on page 139, last measure. You have this, then lift up for the phrase. The left hand, you get an eighth rest. It's not all sound. Well, if you look at it on page 138, when they had similar stuff going on, the left hand had a quarter note. There's no rest in there. There was sound. So this is an important distinction. It's a difference, and it's important that you bring out, or you play that difference. So make sure you play that rest in the left hand. And you play a rest by being quiet. Second line, you can pedal it like they're telling you to pedal it, is fine. Third line, same thing, pedal it like they're telling you to pedal it, is fine. Actually, page 139, you can pedal it like they're telling you to pedal it, is fine. I don't really have any changes for that. There's a lot of pedaling going on, but you're not pedaling everything, and so just do what they're telling you to do. Let's try this out really slow, just to check the notes and the rhythms and all that. And I'll try and pedal it like I said I would pedal it, so you can, if you're just listening and watching the pedal, you can kind of get an idea, what's going on there. I put the metronome on 50. It's beating quarter notes. This is in 4/4 time. A lot of 1 and 2 and 3 and going on here. You're going to come in on the end of 3, so it's like 1, ready and go, and then we start. So let's try that and see what happens. Right hand, left hand, foot's on the pedal. Here we go. 1 and ready and go.